Hi everyone, today let's talk about Microsoft, then we'll take a look at Google and the calendars for tomorrow, then we'll get into the charts, as well as my results for the day and my thoughts going into tomorrow's session. If you like trading stocks and options and making money, definitely like and subscribe. I make videos like this every single day that the markets are open as well as Sundays, so make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Welcome to the Portfolio Bulletin. Let's get started. So Microsoft crushed earnings as they typically do. I don't know if I've seen them put out a bad earnings or even a mediocre earnings for quite a long time. And once again, they topped expectations. Net income jumped 27%. Azure cloud revenue accelerated for the first time in 2 years. And management is currently raising guidance for the current quarter. In terms of earnings, expected to be $2.65, got $2.99. Revenue beat by $2 billion. Everything looks massive. Shares jumped after hours on the announcement. Revenue growth 13% year over year. And for guidance, they expect $60.4 billion up to $61.4, which implies 15% growth, well above the street expectations. Again, everything going well. Azure jumped 29%. Faster than the 26% expected, which was an acceleration like we talked about. Azure AI now has 18,000 customers, up from 11,000. So AI starting to provide some revenue here to Microsoft. Basically, everything is going well and continues to do so. Looking at their heat map for growth and current expectations, you can see everything is expected to be positive. Q2 of 2023, we did have a couple of sectors that were negative. And then you have Windows OEM being kind of the laggard here. But looking out to Q1 of 2024, everything is expected to grow, and you do have some pretty fast growers, including Azure at that 29%. It's also worth noting that in this quarter, Microsoft announced fresh cybersecurity services and new Surface PCs with AI Copilot, and they did complete that acquisition of Activision Blizzard after the UK was threatening to stomp the deal out. Moving over to Alphabet, they actually did okay, but the stock is not doing great. Revenue was up 11% for the first time in more than a year, so Alphabet growing, but cloud missed, and that has their biggest net margins. And anytime cloud is not doing well, that tends to lag on these big tech companies. And that's part of why Microsoft is going higher with that Azure growth. You can see earnings beat by 10 cents per share, revenue beat by about $500 million. YouTube continues to outperform. Cloud revenue did miss by just a little bit. And then traffic acquisition costs basically in line with expectations. They mention here that YouTube's TikTok competitor now has 70 billion daily views, up from 50 billion in the previous year. So pretty good competition there for TikTok. But like we talked about, cloud revenue coming in worse than expectations, missing the mark by $20 million, meaning that it's slowing down. You can see that revenue growth continuing to stair step up over the last 4 quarters after stepping down from 2021 all the way to Q4 of 22. Now we have a little bit of a re-acceleration. But like I said, I think everyone is kind of focused on cloud revenue. And the question is, are they going to be able to make any money from their OpenAI competitor? And how is that going to drive revenue? They're also continuing to spend money on companies like Waymo, which continues to report losses, a little bit more than $1 billion per year. And they also mention here in January, the company was cutting 12,000 jobs, or approximately 6% of their workforce. They were spending a lot of money on new hires, as well as dishing out a lot of stock compensation. It does seem like they've pulled back on that a little bit, but it is still pretty high compared to its peers. Moving over to the economic calendar, global services PMI, a little bit better than expected, above that 50 line. You like to see it. 2-year note auction actually was below the previous read. Haven't seen that in a while. Both of those a little bit leaning towards the bullish side. Looking at tomorrow, we got building permits at 8 o'clock, new home sales at 10 o'clock, crude oil at 10:30, and then we got Fed Powell speaking at 16:35 after hours tomorrow. We'll see if that is a big impactor like the last one was. Could be interesting. Moving over to the earnings calendar, you can see all those big beats by the top companies, everyone doing well. Texas Instruments missed on both, but not by much. Otherwise, everyone else in this top group is beating on the top and bottom lines. The question is what's going to happen with guidance. Can we accelerate growth at this point? I do think that is probably not going to happen over the next year or so, but we will have to continue to look at the data in terms of earnings. Looking at tomorrow, we got Meta after hours. That's the big one. Still got T-Mobile in the morning, IBM after hours tomorrow, Boeing in the morning as well, General Dynamics tomorrow morning. Couple of big companies with Meta being the headliner for tomorrow. Moving over to Max Pain, you can see we are currently sitting at 427 for Max Pain. Stock price well below that. We have rallied towards it a little bit. Total options 1.3 million. Put call ratio continues to dwindle a little bit, dip below that 3 level. Put wall at 420 continues to hold. Can we get above 425 for the close and finish in this 425 to 430 range? That could be interesting. Obviously, we have some heavy hitters left on earnings for this week, and potentially Fed Powell speaking, but right in this range does seem to make sense for the end of the Friday session. Moving over to the charts, starting off with the SPY. This is an island reversal here now, so that's a nice setup. We got the gap down, doji, gap up, rally. We're above the 200 on the daily chart. Everything says this could go a little bit more bullish here tomorrow. You want to see momentum step towards that bullish candle on the daily chart. Haven't seen it quite yet. Volume also stepping down on that bullish price action. Not typically what you would want to see. Want to see that step up on stronger volume. But right now we're seeing EMAs consolidate. We're sitting on top of that 21 and the highly traded zone at that 423 area. So far, not so bad. We got a little bit of a rally, has not broken down yet. We're continuing to make higher lows, higher highs, not so much. We've kind of wicked this same level 3 times in a row. We'll go ahead and give that some short-term structure. It looks like a little bit of a rising triangle. Potentially, we'd like to see that breakout above that 424.50 level. We've touched that level 3 times. Obviously, still watching my 425.82 level. But island reversal potentially looks like we could see some bullishness. We just need to see a little bit of follow through here. If we break out and this turns out to be a double bottom or a slightly lower low with rising RSI, and we do see a breakout here up to this previous level around 444, that could be a nice little run here on the SPY. Moving over to the NASDAQ, basically the same thesis, rising triangle. Looks a little bit cleaner on the NASDAQ actually. We showed a little bit more bullishness. We were up almost 1% here today. Again, want to see it get above that 359.50 level. Still have some clear resistance around that 161 to 162 area. Got some trend lines that we're going to be fighting. You can see those longer term trend lines coming into that same region right at VWAP and the 21 EMA sitting around that same level on the daily chart. But you can see momentum did step towards bullish. If we see a little bit of a follow through here, that could be nice. But we did get that confirmation step towards bullish, and last time we got something like that in this previous consolidation, we did end up getting about a 20-point run here to the upside before we came down and double bottomed at this same level, and right now it does seem like this 353.24 level is going to hold as long as we can maintain this structure. Moving over to the Russell and the Dow, basically the same thesis as yesterday, but this MACD on both of these has really pushed towards that zero line, flattened out on the day, tested that downtrend line at 165.50 once again, continues to hold, doesn't look nearly as clean on the Russell as this is a much lower low than the previous lows, so structure on the Russell still looks very weak. Now I am hesitating a little bit on getting a position here. Doesn't look terrible, and you do have a trade off some pretty decent levels. And as long as 164 holds, you're only 2 points off of that. Not a bad level to trade off of. If that holds, you could see some pretty decent upside potential. But look at that compared to the Dow here, where you have a clear bottom in October. October on the Russell was all the way up about 5 points higher from current prices. Dow, very clean double bottom. If this holds, you could look for a bigger push higher, take out this midpoint. Then we could see a pretty solid move up to these previous highs around 351, which again would be a nice 20-point move from current prices. Moving over to Apple and Tesla. Both of these stepped into bullish momentum after hours here. So Apple, green candle in the after hours candle. Tesla was green basically throughout the day on the 4-hour chart. But both of these look pretty weak in terms of structure still. Need a little bit more consolidation. You want to get above that 21 EMA. If that happens, we start to see a little bit more bullish thesis here. Both of them are above the SMA on RSI, which is a nice little indicator. Again, looking at structure, you have a clear double bottom or even a slightly higher low on Apple. Apple, which does look good and lend itself to a potential up move. Tesla, on the other hand, much lower low from these previous lows. And honestly, I'm still watching this to potentially go lower. We did technically take out this midpoint here from mid-August, but right now we're back above that midpoint. If it breaks down one more time, I would expect it to go much lower back into these previous lows between 188.50 and 197.75. Again, I would be a little bit patient on that as long as 214 continues to hold after this dip low, come back, retest. If that holds and then you get a little bit of a rally, that could be a nice driver for markets to go higher. Moving over to the earnings players, Microsoft, big candle to the upside. Alphabet, big candle to the downside. Neither of these are really outside of their ranges here. Microsoft was higher than this price going back to July of this year. In terms of levels, got all the way up to my 352.07 level, touched that point and then pulled back below 344.86. If it holds this into tomorrow's session, you want to see it get above that and rally to the next one. Certainly possible off of good guidance. Bullish momentum, everything looks clean. We talked about how this was consolidating and looking for a break higher. And sure enough, that is what happened. In terms of structure on Google, we did have a series of lower highs going into earnings, which was not great. We also had a lower low setup, but we did rally off the 200, similar to Microsoft, but we just could not make a higher low here. And then we ended up breaking down from that level. We've now taken out 133.86. Next level for me, 129.92. We also took out trend support here. You can see we've been in this channel for a while. If that trend structure continues to hold as a breakdown, we should see Google starting to change trend to the downside off of bad guidance. Moving over to staples and discretionary. Staples has now established a higher low. We had a double bottom, rallied up, took out this midpoint. We've now established a higher low. Want to see this rally up, make another higher high. Structure on staples is bullish, but it is a little bit tepid. It's moving quite slowly. It is above all the shorter term EMAs, and you do have to respect that. Certainly could go higher here. Longer term ones obviously still bearish. Discretionaries rallied up after the slight move higher yesterday. It is above the 9 EMA on the 4-hour chart. Still watching 153.90. Want to see it get above that level, rally up to the 21. Structure is still bearish, and it's probably going to take some time to flip that. But momentum could show some bullishness. Might see a first test of that 21, maybe all the way up to the 55 EMA, sitting just behind that 158 level. Overall, I just think we were pretty oversold. You can see it here on the RSI. Got all the way down to 1975 on RSI. Very oversold. And it just seems like we're getting a bit of a pullback here. Moving over to oil and gas on the 4-hour chart. Took out the 200 SMA, not what you would want to see. We're still above the 55 EMA, but that's the last thing holding at 145.87, right on top of my level at 145.92. If it's going to hold, it really needs to do it here. Otherwise, oil and gas could be pushing back down to that 140 area. Could be interesting. Bearish momentum, bearish RSI. Everything says it's still going lower. Transports, on the other hand, did come into my 221.84 level yesterday. We ended up holding that level here today. Momentum starting to curl up a little bit. Want to see that RSI cross the SMA, but interesting level. If it does hold and we start to see a little bit of a flip on transports, that could be a bullish indicator, and I am watching this one fairly closely. Moving over to breadth, we did get a slight bullish candle on breadth. I decided to add a level here on the 200 at 29.39, right at this wick low from here today. Ended up getting a little bit of a bullish push. We'll see how that plays out after earnings. You can see this level has been respected a few times. We gapped through it here on this October rally. Touched it a few times on this previous consolidation. I wouldn't say it's a super strong level, but it's interesting here. We did stop at that level on this down move. Still really watching that 24.25 level. I do feel like that's a stronger one, and we might still get there. Momentum still bearish. RSI did show a little bit of bullishness. Again, higher RSI read with lower prices. Some clear divergence. Similarly on the 50-day average, clear divergence, much lower prices. Very similar prices with much lower RSI reads. And you can see that RSI read up around 42 now in that same region, coming off of a little bit of a bullish push. Momentum still says we're ticking towards bearish, so you do have to acknowledge that. But RSI showing some clear divergence to the upside. Looking at yields, not much to say here. 2-year, slightly bullish. but still in the same consolidative area right around 5 to 5.25. 10-year continues to sell off a little bit. We're right on top of that 9 EMA for 2 days in a row here now. We're right on top of that 9 EMA after the slight move down here today. Overall, structure on both still very bullish, but it does seem like the rate at which we are going higher is starting to slow. Moving over to the dollar, we ended up getting a colossal rally after that big dip low yesterday. So sold off really strong down to that 105.50 level, dipped below it just a little bit, and then rallied super aggressively back to the 200 on the hourly chart and the 21 here on the daily chart. This is now a retest of that 21 EMA. As long as that continues to hold as resistance, we could see the dollar continue to sell off. But you do have to respect this up move. There were some buyers that came in. Momentum starting to fade here now after the big rally. But the question is what happens now, right? So we rallied up super aggressive. We're clearly consolidating now between these two levels. Is this a cool off before we get another break higher? Or is this someone exiting a position and we're going to see a break back down to the 200, back around that 103.30 area? Moving over to JNK and TLT, both of these had another bullish candle. We talked about some divergence on the charts, which we've seen several times on this down move, but sure enough, we did get another follow through to the upside. The question is what happens now? We're testing that 9 EMA on TLT. Certainly could get up to the 21, just 1 point higher from current prices. Bullish momentum on both, looks okay. Want to see JNK get above 89, hold that level, and then potentially rally back up to 91. That would be a nice turn of events. We've been consolidating in this region for a long time, but this was a clear breakdown. The question is what happens now? TLT, like I said, also showing a little bit of strength with yield selling off a little bit today. Moving over to the volatility indices, move index sold off, makes sense. But both of these are at a pretty critical point, right? So we have the 21 EMA, 127.50. If that area holds and we start to see another push higher, that could be quite bearish for equities. Similarly here on the VIX, touched that 22.50 level 2 days ago, yesterday, ended up breaking down, selling off again here today. But if it's going to hold, it's really going to do it now at this 18.50 level, in my opinion. You also have the 21 EMA sitting at 18.45. Touch those levels, hold, rally back up to trend at 24.50-ish. If those areas break down, if we test that level and it breaks down, then I would expect this to follow through a little bit more to the downside after that bigger push higher, a little bit more of a capitulation style move on equities. Then we could look for more buyers to come in. Right now, this just looks like a little bit of a pullback for that final push. Moving over to my accounts, you can see I did dip my toe in just a little bit, selling a couple of puts. The puts I had for the day expired worthless, so I did roll those out in time just a little bit, down to 356 and 357 for about $1.60 credit. I'm still playing this pretty conservatively. The structure is still quite bearish. I do want to see a little bit more follow through to the upside. Google earnings might weigh on the NASDAQ a little bit, but hopefully Microsoft can offset that to the upside. We'll see how this plays out. I don't expect a massive breakout quite yet, but the structure, like I said, does look fairly bullish. And once we get that bigger breakout, then I'll be looking to take some more positions. Right now, I'm still pretty light, slightly bullish in my bias. Let me know down in the comments section what you thought of Microsoft and Alphabet's earnings. Are they going to offset? And how high can Microsoft go? Definitely like and subscribe if you got any value out of this video, and make sure you hit the bell so you don't miss out on any future episodes. Of course, none of this is financial advice. This is all for entertainment purposes. Good luck in your trading and have a great day.